Tordrad raised his newly acquired gun upon the resting place within his poleaxe and opened fire. A great chunk of flesh tore out of one of the giant rats, which fell to its knees. Two of the other rats turned to feast on it, but the packmaster's whip decisively sounded once more, deterring them from that action. Tordrad took aim and fired again. From behind, where the first swarm of rats had appeared, came a disheartening sight. 10 Skaven slaves reluctantly appeared from the forest, backed up by 5 clan rats. The 2 were distinguishable based on their attire. The slaves were smaller and were less well equipped than the clan rats. A clan leader led the procession, inciting violence in his troops. The party's faces were shocked. That expression then gave way to fear. Even Tordrad would have admitted feeling fear. If he could have spoken Reichsspiel, though, he would have told them that the true mark of a man is not to be fearless, but to not let it sway you into retreat. With that, another shot rang out, felling one more of the giant rats. The group of rats were now close enough to see the features of the packmaster more clearly. Rysandria took her holy blessed pistol out, an item that once belonged to a witch hunter of some renown, rested it on her horizontally placed forearm, and lined up a shot. She held her breath, and squeezed the trigger gently, so as to not affect her aim. A bullet shot out of the gun with a huge glowing white tail behind it like a comet. It struck the packmaster in the throat, and he collapsed amongst his giant rats, who turned and feasted on their tormentor, now freed from the shackles of his control. The group still stood upon the raised area. Dieter shouted, "This platform will give us an advantage over them!"
"So you do mean to fight them, then, Death?"
asked Tobias fearfully. Dieter gritted his teeth hatefully at the halfling and answered,
"We already are, you cowardly piece of crap! If I hear any more from you, I'll use you as bait for the next wave."
Maestro channeled a dart spell and fired it at the Skaven. It hit one of them, but still they kept coming. Maestro decided that this was probably not the best time to start conserving his powers, especially as he had spotted the new threat coming from the distant tree line.
"Next wave?"
asked Tobias. His voice began shaking a little. Dieter pointed at the distant entrance to the area, where yet more Skaven were incoming. This time, there was 10 clan rats and some new types of rat men that they hadn't seen here yet. Amongst the rabble were 5 storm vermin. These were the warrior breed of the rat people, naturally black of fur and better armoured than the others. They each carried a long polearm. Also, creeping along carefully, they could see 5 more Skaven, dressed all in black, wearing hooded cloaks. They recognized them as assassins, like the one they had met in Middenheim's under passages recently. Rysandria looked at the others in desperation and then threw that feeling aside, deciding to sight up for another shot instead. She would serve her goddess until the end, she thought. Tobias loaded a bolt into his crossbow and fired it at the closest group of Skaven. One of the foul rat men fell. The halfling held an expression of hopelessness on his face as he glanced at the other group getting closer. Tordrad's gun had rung out several more times, but the Skaven were not stopping. The clan leader gave a shrill cry, louder and higher in pitch than any of the party had thought possible from Skaven lungs.
"Oh, that's wonderful," started Dieter.
"He's just warned the others."
"You mean to say you believe this is only the scouting party?"
came Maestro's reply. "I do indeed," answered Dieter. "Don't worry, you'll see the main force soon enough." It all made sense now, thought Rysandria. The beast men and humans had been gnawed on, eaten. It had to have been the rats, those of 4 legs and those of 2. Dieter had suspected as much as well, again not sharing this information with the group at the time. He suspected that the Skaven will have ambushed the loser of a fight between the other 2 races and plunged through them while they were tired and disorganized.
"An army?"
said Maestro.
"Well, perhaps not an entire army," answered Tobias. "Reports had been placed that Skaven presence was fighting with the Empire a short way away. Perhaps this is only a depleted army." "Oh, well, that's all right then, isn't it?" came Maestro's reply.
The others couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic or not as he blasted an oncoming Skaven with a bolt of lightning. Dieter waited, having no ranged attacks of his own. He simply paced back and forth atop the raised area, muttering to himself every now and then. Rysandria noted that it almost sounded like he was trying to reason with himself in some way. As the first group of Skaven got to them, they were thinned out in numbers from the many ranged attacks. Olga growled defensively as Dieter patted the great Doberman to reassure it. Tordrad fired one more shot at point-blank range, right through the face of a clan leader amongst them, tearing its brain half out of its skull. The other Skaven gasped fearfully as Tordrad ran forwards, smacked another clan rat to the mouth with the butt of his gun. Its teeth shattered as the Kislevian armoured tank of a man quickly swung the gun back into its holster and drew his great axe. In its drawing, Tordrad flowed it outwards into an attack which gutted another of the rat men. The Kislevite stepped into the group, tearing at them as he went. Rysandria granted her allies with blessings of Shalia, to embrace them with courage and inner strength, to bless them with enlightenment of thought so that they might react as fast as was possible for them. She hoped it would help, as she struck a Skaven to the chest with her quarterstaff, knocking it back down the steps. Dieter too plunged into the Skaven now, with his beast-man-derived gauntlet on. He attacked assertively. It was paying off. He seemed so happy with the blood of his enemies across his face. Tordrad kept advancing. With each rat man he cut down, he stepped forward into another. Tobias continued to fire crossbow bolts. One Skaven had reached the top of the steps at last, and the halfling had been forced to thrust the bolt he was holding straight into the creature's face. As he withdrew the bolt, it had an eyeball and then some flesh attached to it. Tobias grimaced and loaded it into the crossbow anyway, which he fired at the second group of Skaven who were almost upon them. The shot whistled forwards, cutting the air with a strange sound as it pierced the armour of the storm vermin. It fell to one knee with bits of the other dead Skaven's body hanging from the bolts. At last, the storm vermin were upon Tordrad. He was up ahead all on his own. As the storm vermin attacked him, their hits clanged harmlessly against his thick armour plating. Olga was now busy biting swarms of rats that surrounded him and jumped towards his neck. His body was starting to bleed with bites, for he was more susceptible, being lower down as he was. The young woman finally gathered her nerve and started to attack the rat men too. Tobias noticed that she was firing icicles from her fingertips. Though the magical attacks were not killing them in one shot, they certainly slowed them. Maestro gave a small lightning jolt into the area of the biggest rodent swarm, which fried a lot of the rats at once. This made most of them run away from the source of that damage, which they recognized as being primal energy. No creature would want to stay out in a thunderstorm after all. Some of the others had their work cut out for them, being forced to stomp on rats so that they didn't get distracted from the coming threat ahead. Tordrad's huge battle cry made the Skaven reluctant to attack. "Do Tor!" came the call from the Kislevite, who fought savagely. Still, the storm vermin's best attacks could not pierce his armour. The assassin creatures jumped in and tried their luck. Their attacks too were harmlessly pinging off of the man, who began cutting them down as well. As one assassin attacked, Tordrad kicked the body of a dead storm vermin across the ground at it, tripping it up. Skaven were far smaller than humans, but even so, this was a show of great strength from the man. He then brought his metal-clad boot down upon the prone, black-garbed rat man, crushing its skull. Though outnumbered, the group fought back skillfully, engaging the remaining Skaven at close quarters and pulling into a circle around Tordrad to take the beatings off of him. Eventually, much quicker than they thought possible, the attackers were all dead. The group collectively had become hardened to combats far worse than this. Even the assassins were able to have little effect in their attacks, because it was a fair fight, as their clan rat brethren fell around them, plus they had not gotten the jump on the party, who instead were engaging them face to face. A terrible situation for a Skaven to be in. Two Skaven desperately ran to get away. Tobias reacted quickly, grabbing the weapon closest at hand as he swung a stone from his sling. It leapt into the air and seemingly disappeared into the sky, swallowed up by the clouds on the horizon. But then it must have dropped, because the intended target was hit in the head and fell to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Tordrad casually loaded his gun once more, taking his time as he pushed the powder-laden shot deep into the barrel. Maestro stared in surprise at Tordrad's casual manner. He obviously intended to fire upon the Skaven, but it was running away at a great rate. Soon it would be out of range and away to warn any others that might be present. Tordrad took aim and pulled the trigger. The rat man stopped suddenly, as if frozen to the spot, then fell over sideways. The others looked at Tordrad in marvel. Rysandria examined him and saw his armour had been dented and tested in several places, yet not pierced. When the Kislevite pulled a section of the plating away, however, it was clear to see that he had suffered a terrible bruising, in some places bleeding under the skin. Still he retained a grim smile, and the fixed stare of his eyes were keen below his impressive thick eyebrows. "Granted, it was a bit more than just a mere scouting force," started Dieter aloud to the group as a whole. They all stared at him sullenly. Rysandria looked around and saw no one else except Olga had been hurt, so she laid her hands upon the great dog and let the healing powers that formed inside her do their job. She and the others had noticed her skills in this regard increasing lately. Maestro glanced worriedly at the young woman. She didn't take it personally. Just as well, really, because Maestro was that way with, well, all members of the opposite sex. Her face held recognizable traits of common Empire folk, yet her pale skin, slightly wider face shape, and those striking blue eyes spoke of sterner northern roots of heritage. Tobias looked to the young woman.
My young lady, it is obviously too unsafe for you to remain here. We should escort you away from this place with haste.
Yes, came the young woman's reluctant reply, with sadness sitting around the border of her words. With the threat of potential harm to the young lady having passed, Dieter was now visibly uninterested in hearing anything else about her. He simply got down onto the ground and laid his ear flat against the dusty dirt track they stood on, listening for anything else.
I won't be able to train you, though, said Maestro suddenly,
as if in panic. The young lady noticed that the wizard would not look her in the eye as he spoke.
Before, when I said I could, I literally only meant to explain that I am a master and can recognize that you need training. From someone else.
Tobias looked at Maestro, seeing him stuttering over himself, surrounded by half-cocked incomplete thoughts. I wonder if he'll always be this way, Tobias pondered.
Do you have a name?
Asked Tobias. The girl looked down at him almost quizzically at first, as if he had spoken a different language. Anastasia, came her reply. Tordrad's eyes widened with confirmation as he spoke in his native tongue.
Ah, a good royal name is this. Makes me remember home to look at you.
Thank you, came the young lady's reply in Kislevian, though I suspect I would not hold a candle to the Tsarina's beauty and power. Tordrad was thoroughly taken aback at this. Since leaving his homeland, he had heard no one else speak his language. He had been alone internally for so long. This could be a refreshing change, he thought. Or it could make him miss home again, in a way that even the vodka might not cure. He was always all right, as long as he wasn't thinking about it. The young woman felt at ease with Tordrad and continued to talk openly to him. My father, he was from Kislev. Tordrad nodded in understanding, a smile wide upon his face as she continued. He was disgraced, a soldier in the army, kicked out for misconduct, made a new life here. He said he was lucky to find my mother, or else he might not have been able to go on living. Tordrad became uncomfortable at these words. He shifted uneasily from one foot to the other, and his skin cringed at the topic. He then considered who he had in the Empire, who gave his life purpose to go on, as the girl had put it. He looked at Maestro, who was busily trying to swat a fly away from a plum he had removed from his robes, the wizard ducking and shouting threats of imminent lightning bolts at the fly, who just wouldn't give up on trying to get at the overly ripe fruit. Tordrad shook his head and wondered where it had all gone wrong.